Friends, I welcome you all to this important talk on GDP Base Revision. Uh, I would like to begin by thanking India International Center for hosting today's talk, and I'm also thankful to Professor Partha Mukhopadhyay, who insisted that the talk must be made available online. He will join from Laos, and he said that he will pay for that. So thank you very much, Professor Mukhopadhyay. And we have a galaxy of intellectuals here. We have member of Union Public Service Commission also. Thank you, madam, for joining. And we have Professor Santosh Mehrotra from JNU. So, all of us are aware that the Government of India is considering GDP base revision, and there is a history to it. In 2018, a report of the Committee on Real Sector Statistics, constituted by the National Statistics Commission, gave the back series estimates of GDP. This report remained on the website of MoSPI only for a very brief period. It was removed. It seems that one reason was that the GDP growth in the previous period was looking higher than the current period, and so the government said that the report was not final and it was put up for further consultation. Now, it is a very important exercise because there is also an experience of other countries. So in Nigeria in 2014, GDP rebasing showed that its GDP was 89% larger than previously thought, and it made Nigeria Africa's largest economy. The last revision was in 2015, when a new method was introduced for corporate balance sheets, etc. Mr. N.K. Sharma, who is a former Director General of Statistics, National Statistical Office, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, will be presenting this important talk today, and Mr. Sanjay Kumar, former Additional Director General of NSO, MoSPI, will also say something. And as a discussant, we have Dr. Amey, who is an Associate Professor, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. He holds a PhD in Economics from IIT Kanpur. There are several other experts and eminent scholars who have joined, and I understand that from CMIE, its Managing Director has also joined online, so thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who requested that the event should be made available in the online mode. So over to you, Mr. Sharma. We will have about 45 minutes or so of the presentation and then about half an hour of discussion. Thank you very much. It is not only the GDP data which is of interest to us. In fact, in the sectoral planning group of IIC on agriculture, which I convene, we are trying to write a paper on data difficulties in the agriculture sector as a whole. So if you come across any shortfall in data availability or any discrepancy in data or non-availability of data or disappearance of data, please write to us, write to me. We will try to produce a paper on the difficulties being faced by researchers in analyzing data relating to agriculture, food policy, rural development and allied sectors, because we found that in many cases the data previous data is not available on the website. We have officers from Food Corporation of India here. So if you want to, for example, if you want to see the procurement data of previous year as on a certain date, that is not available now. So a number of changes seem to be taking place, which need to be understood and which need to be explained, especially those who work as researchers on data in various sectors. In many cases, on employment, for example, now data is coming more frequently. Professor Santosh Mehrotra has just written a book on that. Then there are issues of compatibility of current data with previous data. So we have seen in various cases that the current data is not fully compatible with what was happening earlier. So that also produces sometimes a picture which is not very accurate.
Can I just add a few things to what you just mentioned? Of course, it's a great initiative to have this. In my experience, people who use this kind of agricultural data, one of the most important sources is the LUS, which is the land use statistics, which is available in the ministry's website. Now, the difficulty with that is, first, there is no manual on what the LOS actually captures, how it captures. So while on one side we have databases that are collected by a certain format because the format is fixed, every year we have the same sequence but a new layer is added, but there is no documentation or a very limited documentation is available. What adjustments are made if people who understand the way agriculture statistics are produced, we have a first advanced estimate, then second, then third, then you have a full revision cycle. This revision cycle itself is not very clearly explained in many cases. We don't have a full manual which says how LUS statistics are collected, what definitions are used, how are they even produced at the state level. So some of these issues for a researcher, it's very important to understand a manual from where the database, its meaning, its analysis can be done in a much more robust way because most of these definitions are not really available. That's one part. Second part, difficulty happens when you start to translate this unit level data to, let's say, a publication of agriculture statistics that comes from the ministry. Because by and large, that goes into what is fed into, let's say, the national accounts. Or there's a separate table that MoSPI produces, which is crop level value added in agriculture. Now, the difficulty starts when you start to integrate two databases, because the revision cycle of one versus the revision cycle of another one is actually different. What data has gone into producing value-added statistics of crops by MoSPI versus what is being produced by the Agricultural Ministry, that becomes a problem because in many cases they don't reconcile. This problem becomes acute or serious when you go at a state level. That becomes a bigger problem. So that, if issue is resolved, I think a user would benefit more if you have a proper manual to suggest what MoSPI is using, what Agriculture Ministry is using. Yeah.
Presentation
So Hussain, with your permission, can I come in on the labor statistics issue that you brought up? I mean, you gave the listeners the impression that some people have raised issues about consistency between the last 8 years' data that has been produced by the NSS, which is the Periodic Labour Force Survey, between that on the one hand and the prior data, the labour force surveys that were done until 11-12. If I understand you correctly, that's a claim that has been made by one or two scholars and one or two scholars only. And the interesting thing is that the NSS itself has dismissed that claim totally, meaning that there is definitely consistency between the data of 17-18 onwards in respect of labour, as well as, with the data prior to that, which is 11-12 and before. So, I know it's a member of the Niti Aayog which has made this claim, but that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is the NSS itself has made a comparison in the 17-18 PLFS with 2004-05 and 2011-12. Why would they do that? If they've done that, it means it's obvious that the two are comparable, and yet there are people who would claim that they are two not. So there is government data, and they are fairly well established. We may have issues with their definitions. That's a different matter. Let me stop there, because I think you are ready, sir.
Sir, my very sincere apologies. I think
Sir, your mic is not on.
Sir, my sincere apologies on account of my lack of, I think, incompetence in technology. I overwrote the presentation, but let me try and see how much I can project what I want to say. Okay. Sir, as enough has been said about the last base change, so let me just start from the beginning. When we say the purpose of GDP estimate, we say that we wish to observe the levels or changes at sectoral and or the overall levels to see where the economy may be going. So the how helpful and how realistic our assessment will be obviously will depend on the precision or correctness of the estimates. Now there are two intertwined issues, if I may use the term. One is the level and one is the growth. It's right that if levels are correct, obviously growth is a derived function, it will be necessarily correct. However, there are votaries amongst the economists and statisticians who say that at the current stage we may not bother because level has already been, what should I say, corrected enough. So if we can measure the growth correctly, some work, some policy, it can use as some policy instrument. Inbuilt assumption is that the overestimation or underestimation of in the levels, that as a ratio, it remains constant over time. That is the assumption. Another related issue in the measurement is that generally we measure, at least in the non-primary sectors, we first prepare the current price estimates and then we apply deflators, price deflators generally on them. So and when we talk of the growth or change of the GDP, it is always in real terms, what we call at constant prices. So the correctness of the final estimates will also depend on the correctness on the deflators. So that is the basic background on of this presentation. To give a brief background, after the last change of base, there were 2 or 3 basic criticisms of the series. One by as has been referred, use of MCA data set. It was said at that point of time that it is untried, untested. There were many mistakes, most important of which was errors or infirmity, you may say, if not the mistake exactly. That the identification of the activities, it was not known or it was not feasible because when they apply for the SIN, they write a NIC code, but then it is just for the sake of registration. After that, they may do anything, but their SIN remain the same. However, in MCA database, that was the source at that point of time. So that was one very important criticism, that sectoral, even if you are right at the overall level, the sectoral distribution will be will go where we don't know. That was one part. Second was that earlier, if we go in the background of the national accounts, in unorganized sector, the general method used is we call labor input method, and we'll refer to that thing. But however, in the 2011 series, many such sectors, it was said that we'll apply growth of their formal or organized counterpart, corporate counterpart, to estimate even the growth of the unorganized segment. That was, these were the 2 points which were mainly criticized. Another related issue, of course, as we said, the deflator, role of deflators, which was not so much commented upon, but of course it was commented upon. These were the basic criticisms. So I wanted to show in fact there is a table which I wish to show. पुरानी लगा दे, संजय. In the last, by the time I may read, I'll show that. पुरानी लगा दे. Concept. So this much. Now this is the we have accepted a few of the sectors where there were significant revision vis-a-vis the 2004 base, and as it may be seen that manufacturing went up by 28%, trade total went out by 63%, blah blah blah. In fact, in this, there is a minor caveat that there were some changes of NIC in the activities. Something was somewhere, now it is in trade. Something was in trade, it has gone down somewhere. But that was very minor. And the examples are that invariably the gaps widen when we consider it. That is one purpose of this slide. Second purpose is that generally we say that household, in fact we say household, informal, or unorganized interchangeably in the national accounts. So we'll keep using that thing interchangeably. One issue is raised that generally this unorganized sector, there is no data in respect of the unorganized sector. So whenever they are changing, they are likely to change. However, here we see that air transport, where there is no household, it has changed significantly, almost 1/4. Similarly, for electricity sector, again, earlier the only thing the companies were there, they have registered with CA, now the source is MCA data set. In that case also, there has been significant change in the estimates. So, what is the issue? What may be the issue? How are these coming? So, these are the questions which are raised. Another related issue at this stage is whether having seen so many changes, so wide changes, will the estimates stabilize now, or we are going to see another round of the equal significant variations in the estimates? It is just a slide to show the structure and their respective shares. Only comment I used to say that here we may see that household at the overall level, it was 45.5 in 11-12, now 22-23. I am using 22-23 because it is the proposed base. So our general figures are related to 22-23 only. Now unorganized sector has come down to only 44.3. So are we saying that our household sector is not, that organization or formalization is not happening? In fact, if we see in many sectors, the unorganized segment has increased, like say mining, manufacturing, electricity, or communication also. Their unorganized segment or household segment is increasing. So is it the ground reality of those sectors, or the methodology may be responsible in some way? Now this is the part, these are the sectors and these are their shares in which the unorganized GVA is based on the corporate or the organized segment. These are the corresponding shares I have extracted. So overall this amounts to nearly 4% of the total GDP. This is one area of the unorganized sector which is a matter of concern, that we are coping or following the corporate part. Related with that thing, the previous slide, the people comment much on that thing and make an issue out of it, but there is a very relevant issue and very important issue that in these segments, the growth is based on the inter-census or inter-survey periods. And if we add up, it is nearly 8% of the total GVA. Ownership of dwelling, that is nearly 7%, 6%. And then all these other service part. So, and there is no data after base, they continue to be projected on the basis of the past growth. So when they get incorporated in the sum total, how it is impacting, because they are generally unidirectional. The other vital important segment of the unorganized segment is the construction, which is as a residual. There is we'll touch upon the methodology, and trade and repair services, which is projected on the basis of erstwhile sales tax. the methodology wise. And road transport, it's a external indicator that depends on the total number of motor vehicles. Now, why is it a matter of concern? If we see that we started with 71, in fact, and on the expenditure side of the GDP, PFC is nearly 60%. And for measuring or comparing PFC, there is another source of data, NSS Consumption Expenditure Survey. In the 70 to 73, it may be seen that in respect of food, NSS estimates were higher, and non-food was of course lower. But after that, when the food has been going down, the gap has been widening. So whether there may be some issues with the NSS Consumption Expenditure Survey, but is the capture so less, or the GDP estimates are so higher that this growth is the gap has been growing over time? That is a matter of concern for the reliability of the GDP estimates. Another thing, not only the non-agriculture, this last year Dress and Olds wrote a paper in Indian Express, then they updated it this January again. They seek to show that problem in estimation of production of cereal data, and they have calculated the gap. The total consumption, it has remained around 150 million tons, whereas the production has grown up to 304. So if you see the gap has been shooting up, if I may use the term. This is the gap, and the next slide, it is the exact calculation he has adopted. So taking into consideration everything, all consumption, all wastages, all import, export, change in stock, etc., and all the maximum inter-industry consumption, it is seen that there is a gap of nearly 92 million tons in the production of cereal vis-a-vis all its known uses. So what is it? He says, he ended up in fact saying that is there a hidden guzzler in the economy? Because 92 million ton is quite a significant amount. So is the reporting of the agriculture production itself is correct, or to what extent it is correct? Because you want to say something?
Because if it is correct, it is a surplus and the prices are going up. Secondly, if we relate it with the earlier slide, earlier the difference between the NSS estimates and PFC was in 1971 was NSS was higher. Now it is minus 34%. So it appears, we can't say, it appears that even on agriculture side, the cereals, some states are reporting a higher. So this is one of the evidence that, naturally he has questioned that if the production is too high, why the prices are going up?
So just to add to what Sanjay Kumar has said, the WPI inflation in 22-23 was 11% in case of cereal. So whether the production itself is being estimated correctly, that's a question, and that we have to, MoSPI will have to consider it. Now coming to the issue of okay, so sorry. Now is the question, okay, where is this more than 90 MT has gone? This is overestimation. Is it the overestimation coming from states? Now coming to the non-estimation in the 11-12 series. If I may say, this is the these and the coming 3-4 slides are the gist of my presentation as far as I am concerned. So I wish to read those people, those who know. For them it is all right, but I would like to read it that in the unorganized segment, the methodology followed is, we call it labor input method, where labor input multiplied by GVA per worker. Labor is nothing else but the workforce, we may say, and the GVA per worker we get from what is called enterprise survey in the system conducted by NSS. This is the formula they have adopted. Now I have got 2-3 problems with each of them, but before I proceed, I would like to just reiterate to those who don't understand this establishment and direct establishment issues. In NSS, in the unorganized segment, all activities are bifurcated in 3 classes. First is the own account enterprises, where owner is working on his own without hiring any wage paid employee, alone or with the help of his family members. That's called own account enterprises. As soon as he engages a worker, a wage paid worker, it becomes an establishment, and less than or equal to 5 workers, they are called non-directory establishments. More than 5, at least one of which is a hired worker, that become direct establishment. So if you please see in rural area, they are using a rural establishment. That means they have excluded on account. In urban, they are using urban direct establishment. That means they have excluded on account as well as non-directory. The argument used, I would like to read it verbatim. Please bear with me. Okay. This is the in their publication. It may be worthwhile to note that in the urban areas, GVA per worker for directory establishment having 6 or more workers has been used. Since most of the establishment in urban areas are directory establishment, I would like to repeat, this is the argument. This is also in consonance with the practice adopted in the previous series. As I said, I wish to put before you, and rather, if I may say, I wish to counter it. How it has come about. The practice of adopting directory establishment result was there in 1981, and in case of trade only. I wish to read from the 4th line. Having said that thing, in view of these discrepancies in the data relating to NDE and OAE, it was decided to make use of DE survey data only. In own account enterprises.
Yeah, please, because I don't know.
I just now I said. Okay, on account enterprise, that is person is working on his own without hiring any labor. Non-directory is when there is one hired worker but total number of workers is less than or equal to 5. So because there was some issues in their results. So they rejected that thing and they adopted only D survey data. This in the normal course should be an overestimate, as it is expected that the larger establishment covered in the D survey may result in higher GVA per worker than those in the smaller establishment. This was adopted in 1981 series. This was the practice, and I wish to reiterate that it was only in case of trade. However, when they changed the base to 99-2000, this was given a go by, and the bold thing, the GVA per worker used for the new series is that of all enterprises category. They have stopped that practice. Again, if I may say that 2011-12 said that it was the practice in the past. I said that the practice was there at one point of time, but it has been stopped. Again, in the 2004-5, the estimates of the value added per worker relate to all enterprises category. So it was neither in 99 nor in 4-5. So that part of the statement, official statement, is not correct. Now, coming to the second part, that most of the enterprises were directory establishment. I have tabulated the percentage share of enterprises. The first row pertains to the 67th round, which was used in 11-12. The 73rd and ASU, they are subsequent. If they choose to adopt, then I think they'll have to use ASU's results if they wish to adopt enterprise survey for the 22-23. So, what I see that the assertion that most of them are directly enterprises is not borne out neither by way of number nor bio workers. Whereas it is seen that the GVA per worker are significantly different. The D is nearly 2.4 times in urban areas and nearly 4 times in rural areas. And the situation or the pattern remains practically the same. This is not only in case of trade, this is similar situation is seen in case of hotel and restaurant, practically the same with minor changes. Then again, in case of the subsector education, health, real estate, the similar argument was used, similar practice was followed. And again, when we tabulate the 67th round data or 73rd or ASUS now, the pattern is not, the assertion is not borne out. So what I wish to stress and say that on both these factors, they will lead to overestimation because we are using a higher GVA per worker in respect of the all. And that has been widened because in place of trade, now we are talking of many more sectors and subsectors. Now, when we see, because manufacturing is, the corporate is not coming from the unorganized part, is not coming from the MCA data. However, if we see their pattern, 11, 12 to 15, 16, their relative matching is there. After that, there has been a fall in terms of household as shown in NAS and as coming from enterprise side. Leaving aside, let me again put a caveat that there may be minor classificatory issues. It's not exactly, but that does show the pattern.
Just I want to add, there are two things. One is we are talking generally about the growth. And the first part was related to whether the level which we have measured in 11-12, whether they were overestimated or underestimated. So we will analyze it from both the angles. First thing is, by taking the directory establishment, the level which we have fixed at 11-12. Now these slides are related to the growth after 11-12. So are we really overestimating the growth also, which is a general concern? That we will discuss.
The similar pattern is seen if we see the GVA per worker from the different surveys of the NSS, that in the previous period the growth is higher. However, after that, from 15 to 20 to 23, it is much lower. So it stands to reason that the growth, any assertion of similarity or the growing growth is not correct because the growth is seen to have gone down in the later period.
We are giving two tables deliberately because in table number 1, the upper part, we are computing the growth based on the aggregates. Someone may question about the aggregates, and SSO persons may particularly why you are comparing the growth with the aggregates, because there is a possibility of underestimation or overestimation, so we never use aggregates, but it is at the growth. Second thing is, we are trying to analyze the pattern of GVA per worker between 11, 15 and 16, 22, and overall also. So what picture is emerging is that certainly the GVA per worker during 15, 16 and 22, 23 has significantly declined in comparison of 2010, 11 and 15, 16. And if we compare the overall growth also, that is less than what it is coming from the national accounts statistics household part.
Now, a similar pattern, as we said, are seen in respect of trade also. The similar patterns are seen in respect of trade also. In the first period, the growths are quite close. However, in the later part, there is the gap is significant, and in the entire survey, the growth is seen to be falling quite significantly. And same thing as just now said, it's not only the totality, even in respect of the per worker, the growth is much lower than the first part. Now, as related to the growth, there is an issue earlier when the Shri was launched. There are many sectors where especially the trade is a big amount. They were projecting this on the basis of sales tax collected. They would take the total sales tax, take out the organized part by government, by NDCs and corporate part, and then they see that this is the remaining part, which is the sales tax paying household trade. And the base year GA would be projected on that. Similar was the case in respect of, then after the GST, the sales tax got subsumed thereunder, and at that point of time they had issued, November 17, if I remember correctly, the MoSPI had issued a press note, and in which they had given the method of estimating the corresponding sales tax. I don't know whether they are now getting any exact sales tax or whether they are using the ratios only. Then in that case, we apprehend that any residual will go to the household part. Any mismatch, any classification or any non-reporting will ultimately we go down to the unorganized part of the classification of unit or their ratio, what ratio they are using. So that trade growth of unorganized trade may also be affected on that issue. We couldn't resist the temptation of showing this slide, because in the household sector, hotel and restaurant, if I may repeat, it is one of the sector where it is said that household will use the growth of private corporate sector. So when we see year to year, 12-13, the growths are identical, but after that growths are deviating. Again, we see that after 2021, the growths are again matching at the second place of decimals. Whether they did something different during the interim, all those years between were not there. And it is a segment where practically whole thing is either private, corporate or household. There is minimal government. So again, coming back to the same thing, that issue of growth in the earlier portion vis-a-vis the growth followed now coming from enterprise survey and being shown in the national account. There is a gap and it is a fall in the later period. Same GVA per worker, we are showing that it is again the same pattern shown. Other service also, of course, in other service there are different issues, because other service we are not, we don't have access to the disaggregated data. It's broad. However, education and health is a major portion there. But the broad result again remain the same in their case also. The falling growth in 15-16 to 22-23. And again, same thing getting reflected in the GVA per worker for different categories. In case of communication, it is a very minor unorganized segment, and it is like the trade. They used to do service tax. So again, the issue of subsumption of the service tax in the GST and how are they calculating it. Again, it remains a question of residual being getting into the unorganized part. Another thing in the context of this, that they are using minutes of uses for estimating the unorganized segment. However, it is one of the segment where even an unorganized segment may be getting, and I think on account of this mismatch, if I may speak the numbers, in 11-12, there were, it may not be exact figure, but it is indicative. In March 11, if I remember correctly, there were more than 2 million PCOs in the country. Next year, they become 1.87. Last year, it was 30,000, 23, it was 30,000. September 24, it was 15,000. So if we see the only the PCO, because the unorganized are this type of internet cafe or PCO, that's the only contribution coming from. So if we keep increasing on the basis of that thing, I think it will ultimately lead to the some over estimation.
The issue is not only that we are applying the formal sector growth. Even if we are applying the past informal or nice sector growth also in many say like in communication, it may result in overestimation. Because we have assumed the same growth between 2004-05 and 2009-10 to NSS surveys. So the same growth is applied, that growth pertains to the unorganized sector only, but even then, it may be overestimation.
Construction again is a big sector having a large contribution of nearly 8%, but it is in our economy, it is dominated by very large number of small scale season and unreserved on account workers, and most of the work is being done without permits. So how to measure it? Whereas on the other end, the supply of cement, steel, etc., the manufacturers are relatively smaller, so, and that they can be, the data from them can be obtained. So that is the methodology we adopted. We use it a totality on depending on the, as per the fixed ratios. These are the basic material. There are 7 basic materials defined. On the basis of that thing, we add up some other materials which are related. On that, we apply a factor payment of 53.9, which becomes the GVA. That is the Pakka construction methodology. It has been following. Ratios have changed over time. However, the broad methodology has remained the same.
For the organized as well as the
no, sir. It is the total. Pakka construction, it is the total. Then they subtract the budget part or ND part or private corporator, and what is left is the household. So again, all the issues of the residuality are there. Then the most important issue is that over time, this is the ratio of the relative share of the different item. However, what is important here is that as long as the relationship between input and output, that may be a suitable indicator because we are getting it at a lower cost in a lower time. But as soon as the mixture of construction that changes, the fixed percentages of factor payment as GVA, that become a quite iffy part. But this is an issue which requires much longer and much deeper discussion, because so far there has been no survey or anything in case of the unorganized segment. Whether they will be able to do it, the need is there, but whether they will be able to do it now on a
just one. In construction, the problem part appears to be that the share of unorganized is increasing. In fact, because it means there is some problem in measuring the total. Because this formula, it is based on some thumb rule. How to measure the total. Even the type of structures are changing very fast. This formula is, I think, from 1981 and so on. It is minor changes were there. So, in spite of too much formalization, whether the household part or the contribution will increase or formalization. That is the issue. So it appears that there is something wrong in the formula, or we have not changed the formula over time. I think the answer is very difficult in case of construction.
On a related issue, we tabulated this earning of self-employed in the rural and urban, and we see that even at the current prices, there are 4 columns, overall and bottom 40%. We subjectively selected the bottom 40% because bottom 40% we can say that will be only unorganized segment. And when we compare their earning, per month earning, they are quite small. There are many states where even in the current prices, it is not there. But the nearly 11 states, there are less than 100 rupees per day. And in case of Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, it is nearly 62 rupees only. And that is current we are talking. So whether it is not directly related to estimation of GDP as such, but it is indicative how our unorganized segment may be working. If that is the pattern of earning. Yeah, monthly earning of self-employed only. Self-employed.
Self-employed per worker. It is per worker.
Now this is the graph of the same thing. We may see if we see the columns. Say similar thing in respect of the urban. There are also in the real terms even at the overall level, 11 states there is a fall in the real earnings at overall level. So again, because rural we may say there is agriculture dominated, but urban that argument is not there. So will be non-agriculture mostly, and if such is the situation in urban, and that is reflected in the all India also. Now, in the methodological part for the public administration, when we say GDP or GV of public administration, it is nothing else but the salary and wages of the all government servants in the public administration and defense. Now, I have certain reservation, I may be wrong, but this is an issue. We took the current thing and we deflated it, sir. Then we see that even after deflation, there is a, over time there is a growth of some 77%.
Yeah, that is.
So, where is it coming from? When it has been deflated, either the structure has changed so much, or
Compensation itself has
no, we take care of that pay commission, sir. The inflation has been taken in the deflation. And we say, if we say there was hardly 18% or 20%, if we say, even if we at that part, I think the gap is still
too high to be.
Too high. We don't know, but there is something I think.
Sir, on average, if we have 6.5% or 7% year, there is a steady growth. Is expected to be a steady growth, provided you have same levels of employment. I mean, employment also is a very steady rise, but this change is.
The question is, here we are assuming, not assuming, but the number of employees, the size of the government from 2011-12 and 22, it has not increased. In fact,
That's precisely the point.
yeah, that is the point. But unfortunately, the numbers are not available in economic survey. After 11-12, no numbers are available, but it is a perception. If number of persons have increased, this 77% or 50% may be okay. We don't have any issue.
Then to that extent they have increased, that is the question.
If anything, there is a massive increase in
Yeah.
outsourcing.
But that will not be reflected in
Contractual.
but then it should not be reflected in the
Compensation of employees.
employee.
So how it is 77%?
It's not reflected in compensation.
Yeah.
Cannot remain.
So, sorry. So again, MCA has been said, so I will not repeat that this is the reason. It has been said to be the reason because as I said in the beginning, the classificatory errors and their stability of the use. Then second is non-reporting units. Because after that there was a report of the from Ministry of Statistics, and in which it was found that some 12% were not found at the address they were beginning. Some 20% were misclassified. That was the issue of the 74th round. So that is an issue. Now, why? What happened to the non-reporting units? Whether PUC-based projection should be continued. So we should analyze it for their usability. Now, these are the some sectors where they don't go from current to constant, they go directly to constant prices. They have certain indexes and they move directly to the constant part. I have one issue in the last one, when in the methodology, I don't know whether it is a typo or not, repair and maintenance of motor vehicles, they say index of sales growth. I think repair and maintenance is needed by the full stock of the vehicles. Why should it be only sales? I don't know whether it is correct or not. However, there is one issue that when we say constant and current, there is always a component of price movement. The price movement should be there. However, when we examine their price movement, it is seen, the blue line, it is the IPD, we call it implicit price deflator coming from railways. So the price movement is seen to behaving some significant ups and downs. Again, air transport, it is much more volatile in comparison of railway. Same thing for electricity. So what is happening to the price coming from them, we don't know whether it's outcome of methodology adopted or something else.
Can we go to the implicit price deflator for railways?
Yeah. Just for comparison, we put that this is a consumer price for transport and communication.
That can be skipped. But if we see the only railway part, we don't think deflator can behave like this. So it is basically, the issue is the relationship between constant and current. Whether our relationship between constant and current in case of railways, air transport and there is electricity. Can we draw any meaningful interpretation or a comparison or something like that? That is the point.
Except for one COVID year, which was a difficult time, but other than that, it's very hard to imagine that current and constant can behave in so
Because the
widely.
methodology. In constant, they are using quantum index. In current, they are using different set of. So the relationship is not, we are not saying here anything is over or underestimation. It is about the relationship between constant and current.
Now there are some minor issues in which last time they adopted a deflator. Even in the government they adopted, we get DA on the basis of CPI IW, that everybody knows. However, last time they adopted a CPI combined, rural-urban combined of their own in place of this thing. And in all the budget data where the source is salary and wages in all public administration, I say that the deflator should only be IW because regardless of where we are posted, whether we are in health, we are in education, we are in home, we get DA by the same formula. So as long as it is budget figure of the salary and wages, there can be no other deflator of the sector specific or anything. It should be IW only. Now this is one. There is one issue I wish to flag. Now we are talking of the $5 trillion national economy, and many states they have declared their targets. UP will be 1 trillion by 27, Maharashtra I think 30, Karnataka by 32. Now, as I said in the beginning, and with a bit of apprehension and with all responsibility at my command, we showed the production data of Syria. Now, if we are making a target of UP last year and last year, they had given a project of some 125 crore to a private consultancy firm, which was to make the plan for them. So, if they have spent 100 crore for making a plan, and if we put in in our view their production data, will the state be compelled to do something and provide some data which may be higher, and MoSPI will have to deal with it because there is no quality check on that, they have to accept it. So there may be a, whether partner willing or unwilling or unwitting, this is a distinct possibility. I cannot
Overemphasize this.
Overemphasize. Thank you, sir. So this is so ultimately the MoSPI has to be quite on their guard what data to use, what methodology to adopt, and enough has been said about the politicization of data, whether they may become, that they don't become a contributor to in that. Now we are coming to conclusion. As we said, the agriculture sector, we have not referred to NHB data, it has got its own problem, but if we just see the serial, it may be overestimated. Evidence suggests that level as well as growth in trade, hotel, restaurant, health, we showed the slides and the methodology. So why as it was said, why the unorganized part is increasing, then it's relooking into. The methodology requires some relooking. Owner occupied, we can't say anything because it's a census based, it is continuing and it will again continue. I don't know what will they do. I don't think there is any other data set. So we can't say anything about that thing. Formal sector, public administration, we feel it is some issue is there, the classification of the budget. So whether it is pension or something else. Again, on the formal sector, in MCA data, non-traceable companies, they may be contributing something to on the higher side only. The exact contribution or to the extent, we can't say anything, but there are, it needs relooking into what deflators we are using. Again, as I said that MCA, it is my feeling, MCA data set is undoubtedly a minor detail, but it requires a holistic and critical relook for the reasons which have already been said, particularly in the context of classification, to know their exact activity and the variables they are covering. Because there were examples that some of the relevant variables were not bifurcatable in their reporting. So that is a very important issue. Now, unorganized, and as we said that instead of using only DE data, they should use the corresponding of the all category or the respective category. They should not be. Again, as we showed, there are many segments where the extrapolation of growth rate, like owner-occupied dwelling and other segments where inter-survey or inter-census based data is used. So whether any survey or any other data can be explored, that instead of uniform growth, some ground reality is incorporated. Again, we are saying that also there are survey planned that now it is planned that there will be annual surveys, but whether they can provide this aggregates and those changes with that appropriate sensitivity, they should be examined. Otherwise, we may again end up like MCA situation.
Just about this every year growth rate. In fact, no one has, I think we have not analyzed so far. Even it is difficult to get a reliable growth over a period of 5 years, overall growth. And I used to give the example of 93, 94 to 99, 99 to 2003, 4. Now we are saying every year growth at sectoral level. What will be its reliability? I think survey result will be there. You can apply the multiplier, you can get any number. But usable or not?
Okay, this was the slide we missed, but in the production approach, double deflation has been a long felt need. Whether they will be able to do it, don't know. Again, that whether in some items, there is production may remain the same or number may remain the same, however the contribution may depend on the quality. So whether they can incorporate some hedonic adjustment, especially in these items, that's a time that they should. Otherwise, if they miss it in the base, then we will be left for next 5 years or whenever the next one comes. this is a related issue, that there should be simultaneous revision of WPI as well as IIP. Otherwise, then they revise it after 1 year or 2 years, and then all the growths are required to be recalculated. So they should take care that ministry should release on the same basis or simultaneously they should be revised. Now, finally, to conclude that, to regain confidence that MoSPI should come up with the micro data by their own guidelines for statistical data dissemination. There is very few data which can be called non-shareable, but we are not much hopeful on that account, because in January they had circulated a draft policy in which it was proposed that the data which is now available on demand, that it will be approved by the highest officer in the ministry, each, and that will be decided what you propose to do with that, what will you do with that, what is your intention, who are you. So that was the draft. I don't know if you have not seen the final part, but somehow we are not, that is my last word.
Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you. So, Professor Mehrotra, you know that now getting data will become even more difficult. Over to you.
Can be harder. Okay, thank you, Chair. 10-15 minutes? 10-15 minutes. First, on the presentation that both our speakers have made, I'll start from the last point, which says, or which is in fact the title on what can be done for regain confidence. If I just sidestep for a moment, the amount of work that has been presented, honestly, for an independent researcher, it's not possible to do, because it's a fairly holistic idea on what happens in different sectors, in organized, in unorganized, and the detailed changes, which for an ordinary data user is not possible to do. You can limit yourself to one sector, two sectors, or particular part of it, but presenting an overall scheme of things requires a detailed understanding of national accounts to begin with, what methodology is being used, and what data set is used. To the best of my understanding, many users may not be totally technically aware of what is being used. Having said that, there are three main contentions which our speakers have said. Let me break it down into two parts. One is a problem with changes in method, and one is a problem or maybe an issue of introducing new databases. If I go back to the whole idea that a base year revision exercise essentially is done to do these two things: change new databases, or change in methodology. Objective being, we improve coverage, we are truer, fairer, or build probably a little more accuracy into our system. If these are the two main broad objectives, let me take you back to the experience of the base year revision that happened in 2015, which was 2011-12, released in 2015. What have been the learnings of our base year revision exercise in the last 10 years? We introduced a new base year with publishing a document which is called Changes in Sources and Methods of Estimation, which is actually not the original sources and methods. The original sources and methods is 2012. This document only tells you what changed, which assumes that the data user actually knows what was going around in the previous years, which to the best of my understanding, maybe a lot of data users did not fully grasp, which is what the presentation actually hits at, where you have an unorganized part, maybe certain elements were used, the data user maybe could not grasp the entire effect of it. What happens when you use directory of establishment as a metric, as a measure, or when you use all enterprises, what happens? These finer changes, maybe a user is not technically aware, which is where the presentation sort of hits at. You can debate on the magnitude, but for a data user, one has to go back and recalculate. That is slightly harder. Second point, what happens when you change a database? If we are moved from ASI to MCA for the organized part of manufacturing and services, what technically changed? We changed the definition from enterprise, from an establishment to an enterprise, which is what the MCA 21 database allows you to do. Technically speaking, it allows you to do. which led to a major change, which is what they showed in their presentation. Manufacturing changed by so much, etc., wherever you had organized sector databases. Is that conceptually, theoretically correct? Was it tested? Was it not tested? How different was it in comparison to ASI? Those debates have been there for the last 10 odd years, which has been the first learning of our base year revision exercise, that we introduce changes, but we really can't defend those changes. Were there classification errors? How have they been resolved? Technically, no answer. Is the new database a much wider universe of the organized part? That also may be debatable. That's another point. Have we made a conceptual progress? Yes, one can argue that you moved from an existing system to a system that is compliant by international standards. Yes, we moved from an establishment to an enterprise. Has it led to a better improved system? The answer is mixed. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. And in some cases, we've added, I think, maybe 4 or 5 new problems. So instead of solving 2, we have added at least 4 or 5 new problems. If I take it forward to say that state level estimation has really become complex. So instead of solving 2 problems, we may have added another 3 or 4 problems. Let's come to the unorganized part. It was very easy for users to understand what is labor input or what is effective labor input. But conceptually speaking, these things make a lot of difference. They have worked hard on showing you the difference, but technically speaking, if you were to understand the methodology behind it or what was the choice of the decision that was done, it is fairly hard. And it doesn't say, or it doesn't sort of give that confidence that have we really improved on our method. If people are aware of what's going to happen in the new, there was a recent data users workshop. In this, they are saying that one aspect which the speakers also mentioned, that we are estimating levels of 11 and then moving forward the estimate using indicators. Some of these indicators are, or most of these indicators are organized sectors. So you basically replicate what's happening in the organized part onto the unorganized part. Now the new method would probably say, or would move towards, is that we have annual surveys of unorganized sector enterprises or service sector enterprises. So instead of moving using indicators, we will use growth rates based on these surveys, which is where his last point comes into picture, that if we have moved to these new surveys, which are assumingly annual, are they sort of designed to answer those questions? Do they provide that kind of robust system of growth rates? That's a separate discussion altogether. I'm not really extending on that part, but that is a question that remains. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because of 2 basic reasons. In the national accounts, there is a major design constraint. We don't introduce changes every year. Most changes happen only when there's a base year revision. So what you introduce today, you get stuck by it, you have to go by it mostly, and you have to wait till the next base year revision, which unfortunately was thought of as once in 5 years. That was the broad idea. Due to some crisis, of course, here and there, we haven't been able to maintain that timeline. We are now about almost 15 years old in that, but better late than never. But now what we'll introduce, again, will get there for some time. So what is important is what we do now. Otherwise, we'll again be into the same problem. So which comes back to my original starting point, that how to regain confidence. Third learning from the previous year's base year revision exercise was that we were battling some kind of perception that our numbers are showing something else, whereas general, I won't say public perception, or the general assessment of these numbers were that they were not really capturing that changes in the economy, whether good, whether bad, whether crisis. So as a statistical system, one should reflect to say that are our macro indicators or the way of our estimation, can it really capture this kind of shocks? Is it even robust to capturing those shocks? Is it even built to capturing those kind of shocks, maybe good, bad. There are some good things also happening, some bad things also happening. And for a series of negative events that happened, are our macro indicators robust enough to even capture that change? That answer you can only get when you see the methodologies that are being followed. If a large part of our system is only getting extrapolated for some time with using indicators, then the quality of your estimate really becomes weaker, because the way your economy moves is not really getting captured by the design problem. It's a design issue. It's got nothing to do with what's higher or lower or over or underestimate. It's a pure design. It's a pure design issue. The last point, which I think he also mentioned, a lot has been written on MCA ever since it was introduced. What is available of the MCA in public domain is very little to do any deeper analysis of what MCA actually offers. But it was introduced, it's going to stay most likely. It's a gold mine, as he says, rightly says. But the lesson learned from there was, we didn't do, I think, enough research when it was introduced. We didn't do much as the consequential problems that it led to. I think those have been discovered only after it was introduced, and over time those problems have now stayed. How to go back and revise it, it's a very complex issue that I will leave it to them, because, or maybe it's a separate matter to discuss. It's a very complex issue to now go back and change what we have arrived from the MCA. One last point, I think, on the matter of regaining confidence. In the previous base year revision, maybe the statistical system could not really communicate what they did. There were 6 committee reports that came: compliance with SNA, unorganized sector, unorganized manufacturing, unorganized manufacturing, PFCE, real sector statistics. There are at least a whole set of committee reports that came around the base year revision. Some great work was done, some not so great work was done. As a data user, I'm saying, not as a person from MoSPI. Those, I think, were not communicated. Changes that happened were only briefly communicated, with the assumption that the user already knows what happened. If you're aware now, MoSPI has really started that kind of public engagement, that kind of confidence building measure. Data dissemination has sort of improved, publication quality has improved, new surveys have been released. It's for user to decide what has happened, what quality it is, and what more do you demand from the system. So I think in this base year revision, if one has to really regain confidence, if the statistical system sort of hits on 3 main pillars of it, that methodologies are very clearly described, and a user gets the feel of it, that this methodology is enough to account for both changes or all kinds of changes in the, or to the fair extent. Nobody knows true GDP in any case. That is one. Second, I think an outreach is very important from a data user's perspective, so that you ask the right question. It's not about just magnitude, whether it's going up or down, or it's 5 or 6% or 8%. You basically discuss on the quality of the estimate. I think that makes a lot of difference. It helps both the user as well as the statistical system. The right feedback is given, and I think the right use of data makes it worthwhile. That's pretty much my assessment of it. I'll leave it to the chair.
Thank you.
If
Thank
that
you so
was
much.
useful.
So, we have heard very technical assessment of how GDP is calculated. So, Professor Mehrotra, has the government of India set up a commission to recommend how this exercise of GDP revision will be done? What is going to happen?
Not that I know of. You might know.
Convened. The ACNAS is already
He is there,
convened.
he is there.
Please. The ACNAS is already convened. There are at least, I think, 8 or 9 subgroups which have been assigned different tasks. Each of them is doing their bit of work, and all that probably will be collated at some point in time.
So who is at the apex level?
We recognize the advisory committee on national accounts. That's a 26-member group, which is the advisory committee.
No, so
Which is what
is
is
there
being
any
done.
national statistical commission which is responsible for this?
Still in office?
Commission is there, but
NSE is
it doesn't lay down the methodology in that sense. That there are working group type of things. At every base changes, they make a main group, then they make some subgroups, as you said, depending on the different sectors or services or segments, and then they recommend the methodology or data sources. That is how it is.
So that is, quite complex, whatever you explained. I do not know how much our viewers have understood. But going back to the paper written by our previous chief economic advisor, who then wrote this paper from Harvard, that the GDP in his own period was, perhaps lower than what was projected in the official documents. So what is your assessment, because not only we keep revising it for previous years, actually the GDP data comes some 2-3 years after the year is over, and in the meantime everybody is very happy that 6%, 7%, largest growing economy and so on. So what is
I
No,
think-
my
I think it is very difficult to say because growth, when we are using formal sector growth, when we are using past trend, it is not necessarily that always we are using the growth which is higher than the actual. It may be lower also, technically. Our main point is what Sapre is saying, we are not bothered about 6% or 4% or 7%. Whether methodology is sound or not. Whether we can obtain the growth from the annual surveys like ASUS or these things, that is the important issue. So, in construction, we don't know actually what is happening. But prima facie, if we see that we have said that earning per worker is going down, other indicators from ASUS, the survey, it appears that certainly there is a difference in growth, what we are measuring from. Actually, Amey Subramanian paper was on the MCA basically.
Okay, so it seems there are some students here. Would you like to say anything? Any student here? Okay. Sir, would you like to say anything? No? Too technical actually.
Lifelong students are trying to learn. Ask 2 or 3 questions. Use the mic, please.
It will be useful for all of us if, since you are insiders and you spent a lot of time doing this, it will be very useful for us if you walk us through what were the changes that resulted as a result of the start of the use of the MCA as opposed to the annual survey of enterprises that used to go, the ASI that used to, annual survey of enterprises in the organized sector. My second question has to do with this question which is partly related to what Arvind Subramanian was raising, but it's only partly, it's actually much more related to what was the impact of first the demonetization, then the GST, and then the lockdown on the unorganized sector. Now I think that's fairly well established. Already then microdata was establishing it, and now the ISU's data has enabled us to find out that, and your own, what you are presenting has shown very clearly, that the unorganized sector suffered very severe shocks and is only just barely recovering and come out of that. So if, as you were telling us, that we had until 2016 had stable ratios between the organized and the unorganized, practically for every sector of the economy. And those ratios would have been destabilized. No question about this. Those would have changed because the unorganized sector suffered severe shocks, which in a sense the organized sector didn't suffer. So what do you think was, in your view, has been the impact of that? Let me put these two to you to start.
Use the mic, please.
When you were talking about Dr. Subramanian's paper, actually...
I'm not talking about Subramanian. I'm really talking about the impact of the shocks. that came to the unorganized sector and what impact that had on the estimation of the GDP.
That we have seen from the data that from 1972, let us see the PLFS data only, earning per worker. It is stagnant, zero or maybe negative. So it indicates that the unorganized sector, the growth is maybe in some sectors may be slightly positive, but in other sectors it is almost, how much it is very difficult to say because we have our own reservations about using these ASUS results or 73rd round results or even the 67th round. Because, let us see, when they say, now it is all interrelated. In 1981, when they have used the directory establishment, they have said that own account enterprises results and these are not usable in one way. How reliable these results are? But certainly, all data sets are indicating that growth has declined between 2015-16 and 2022 in respect of unorganized sector. MCA तो you and
MCA आप शुरू करें okay.
आपका domain है.
अच्छा okay, very quickly, very briefly, so that people can not into very technical details, but very simply. So in the documentation and in concept, three things have changed. One is that we assume or we state that we have moved from an establishment to an enterprise. An establishment was referred to as a factory, which is covered under Factories Act, and an establishment and an enterprise is the large company. So suppose one company may have different factories, but when you file an annual financial return, which is annual financial return is profit and loss and balance sheet, which is what the company files with the MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, which that gets into a database called MCA 21, and so on and so forth. So profit and loss and balance sheet are filed for the entire enterprise as a whole, not for one particular factory as such. That technically changes the sources of value addition, not only from a factory, but also to other ancillary activities around manufacturing, which is captured in the enterprise, not as such in the establishment. But please also remember that ASI is also profit and loss and balance sheet based. They also have profit and loss and balance sheet, which is taken in their schedule, not as such separate form, but in their ASI schedule. That was one change that happened. Second, economic activity classification is based in the MCA is based on CIN. CIN is the corporate identification number, which is a 21-digit code, which is assigned to a company when it is registered, incorporated, at the time of its incorporation. That 21-digit code contains 5-digit NIC, which is the 5-digit activity code, and the first 2 digits are major digit, that is the major activity, and the sub 3 further digits. Now the only issue with this classification is that it is assigned to you in the year of your incorporation, the way you were registered, for the activity that you have been assigned. Today you might be doing something else, or maybe you have a multi-activity portfolio, diverse enterprise. But that CIN will remain the same. So you will be classified based on the CIN that was given to you in the year in which you were incorporated. Now NIC also has changed over time. We have a 2008 NIC, we have a previous many, at least 4 NICs have been there, 67, 89, 4.
वो NIC 2004 वाला वर्जन था, so वो 8 में रिवाइज हो चुका है, और वो उस सिम में अभी भी वही रूल है, रूल के हिसाब से भी वही है.
So what happens is the system takes you as a company which is registered in this particular CIN, in this particular economic activity based on your classification. To improve on this, a form called MGT7 was introduced, which takes into account your maximum revenue generating product to be able to classify you in an activity in which is contributing the largest revenue. That is done only by a handful of companies. Now the system says we've done it for almost 60-70%, but in the year it was introduced, I think around 50% of them was only there. There are 2 types of companies that file, 2 types of forms in which information is taken in MCA. One is XBRL and the other is 23AC. 23AC is for small firms. XBRL is for larger firms which have a 3 cut-off, 100 crore over turnover listed company. There are about 3 criteria. If you fall in them, in that criteria, you file in XBRL, which is a separate format. Is a much detailed, of course, a much detailed format. About 38,000 companies file in XBRL. The rest all file in 23AC, which is a shorter form, not much detailed. So those two major changes happened in the way. Now the methodology is conceptually same. You first make gross value of output, then you make intermediate consumption, then you make taxes, and you net it off, and you get value added as a remainder. But the conceptual change that happened was that in ASI you have multipliers which are based on number of companies because it's a stratified sample. So the way you have a design of ASI in the census sector and the sample sector. In MCA, the scaling up is based on inverse of paid up capital ratio. So there are three types of sets in MCA: total registered, active, and available. Total registered are companies which are, I have a minute, right? Total number of companies that are registered, which is let's say about 20 lakh, roughly I'm saying. Active are those which have filed returns at least once in the last 2 years. It was earlier 3 years, I still believe it's 3 years. That's active. And available are those which have filed returns in the current year, that is for the previous financial year. So from 20 to 14 to 7, actual filing is around 7. Active is around 14 and registered is around 20. So what we do is we scale up from 7 to 14, and that scaling up is based on, this is all described in the methodology, I'm not.
On what ratio?
So now the scaling up factor is the inverse of paid up capital of active to available. So active companies have some aggregate paid up capital, available companies have an aggregate paid up capital. The inverse of that ratio is used as a scaling up factor to scale up the GVA of available companies. So I estimate GVA of available companies. I then multiply by this factor and put it as the total for the active companies. That's the broad methodology. I'm simplifying it. It is done at a much category level, but that's by and large the procedure on how it is done, which is very different from the way it's done in ASI. So these are three conceptual changes, broadly speaking, that have happened. There's a committee report which describes of much in detail. Anybody interested can
Has anyone done an analysis of the ratio as you move from available?
Somebody is on mic.
As you move from available to active to registered?
Yeah, we did that. We did simulations to account to see what is. So it depends. It's an old problem which Professor T. N. Srinivasan had some point in time said. So we tried to do it. We have even simulated this kind of a problem. It depends on whether. So his argument was that the active companies the available companies are essentially self-selected. So it's a self-selection bias problem because you only estimate for those which are available to you. It's given to you. You don't select it out of a random sample, just like we do it in a sample case in ASI. So to avoid that, you need to assume, you need to first understand the filing pattern of companies. Our company is actually filing every year. So if people are filing selectively, then you only have those companies which are filing.
So would you say that in the MCA, using the MCA or the switch to the MCA has in that sense actually made things more uncertain as opposed to the
It's
situation
not
prevailing as
if-
an ASR?
If the universe of companies has pretty much settled, if the filing pattern, we don't really know the filing pattern for the last so many years. It would be a great discovery if that happens. I think the only uncertainty part is when we go down to the state level, because this is at the aggregate. ASI was still useful because you could do what was in MP, what was in UP, what was in Karnataka. Because there you could just see the manufacturing, all registered factories, the census sector, sample sector, you could just do that. You may have missed some part of value added, but that's also contested what you may have missed. In the MCA, one problem which is true that at state level it is difficult because it doesn't have geographical indicators. I can't allocate to states based on all national totals. That is one issue which is a separate issue, but that is a big issue. Other than that, I think if a lot of companies also get deregistered, and a large number of deregistrations also happen, that critically depends on the active set of how you define the active set. I think I'm exceeding my time.
Okay. So it is quite clear that even organized sector data may have a lot of questions to ask. So finally, we come to Anuradha Prasad, who is a member of the Union Public Service Commission. So, madam, you will be selecting the Director General of NSO India, who will be the Director General in 2060. So, please, I hope you have grasped, whatever was discussed, and you will be maybe chairing the interview board for Indian Statistical Service officers, so say something.
So as you mentioned, it was a very highly technical and complex presentation, and I don't think I'm informed enough to comment anything on it. But I have tried to absorb some issues, and perhaps I'll be better prepared when I read the articles, when I send the newspapers, and maybe I'll have some better questions to ask when the interviewees, candidates come to me. You want to ask something?
Sanjay, want to say
No, actually, this was really technical, so I would not get into that. But what I felt at some point of time, we did a lot of work on the, I come from the tax background, so we did a lot of work on the unaccounted income. And that gives you a good idea about what is happening. And because what you're talking about is largely about the unorganized sector. While the organized sector is generally well taken into account, it is the unorganized sector which is creating the whole problem because you are unable to estimate. And at that point, it was almost like 40% of the economy was considered to be unaccounted. And this report was made by NIPFP actually, was never made public because it was sent to the parliamentary committee, standing committee on finance, and then the government kept it closed. 40% is a large sum, right? That is what it was estimated based on multiple things. And for each sector, you talked about the construction, you talked about the trade and all those things. Every sector, I think, ran into about 2 volumes and really thick ones. They calculated that almost like 40% is unaccounted. If you take that into account, because those, and we are only talking about corporates, we're not talking about partnership firms. Partnership firms, and there are a large number of them, they don't have any kind of registration with you. They don't get included. Some of them, which are really big ones, file their tax return. So in some manner, they are part of your organized sector. But there are a large number of them which are unorganized. And also the individual business establishment. Very few file of tax. Many of them just go by that. And you'll have lots of anecdotal examples where GST is not even paid, even in this auditing mechanism. Large number of areas. Take for example, Chandni Chowk area. Almost like 80% of them don't pay taxes. And if they are the end, firms, there will be producers, there will be suppliers, there will be whole value chain, before them who are not part of the GST. That means large amount of it is so. Because you have dealt it from a purist point of view, my sense is that the economy is being underreported rather than being overreported. And that is, and so I was, because you have taken a very, at one point of time I was a student of math, so I could understand a little bit of what you did, but you have taken a very purist point of view. You have not presented the practical side of it, which is simply missing in the entire matrix. Unfortunately, I
see it from a different angle, and I felt that the economy, based on some of the activities which are happening, and a large number of anecdotal examples are there, is far more than what it is being reported. That's my point of view.
So we end on a very positive note that actually our economy is much higher than what the GDP is showing us. So now I think we have come to end of it. My request to all the participants is that it is such a technical thing, very little of it is in public domain. People do not know how it is done, what are the deficiencies. So please start writing in simple language, what do you expect the government to do when the GDP revision exercise is completed. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone, and thank you, IA.
Chair and to participate.